Hey, Grandpa, think you can handle something heavier than that broom? The taunt sliced through the dry afternoon air, carried on the smug confidence of youth. It came from a young Marine sergeant, his posture sharp, his body honed by years of disciplined training. His tone held the easy arrogance of someone who had never faced real loss. Around him, his squad of scout snipers lounged in their high-tech camouflage, rifles slung casually, the firing range their domain. But the old man didn't answer. Kenneth Harding, 82 years old, just kept sweeping. The broom's soft scrape against the dirt gathered a neat little pile of spent brass casings, gleaming faintly in the sun, the quiet rhythm of a man who'd long outlived the need to prove anything. His movements were unhurried, measured, not weakened by age, but refined by it. Each motion carried the precision of someone who had spent a lifetime mastering patience. Kenneth Harding was small, his back slightly bent, his hands rough and knotted by time. Deep lines traced his weathered face, not signs of frailty, but of endurance. To the young Marines, he was invisible, part of the scenery. Just another piece of range equipment, no more alive than the target stands or ammo crates. Sergeant Thorne, his name stitched sharply across his uniform, smirked and nudged one of his men. "What's the matter, old-timer? Cat got your tongue? Careful, Sarge," another Marine snickered. "He might sweep away his pension." Laughter rippled through the squad, echoing across the dusty range. Kenneth paused, not to respond, but to pry a stubborn casing from beneath a shooting bench. His silence wasn't defiance, but dignity, a calm patience that only seemed to provoke the young men further. Their world was built on noise, orders, and bravado. His quiet was an alien language, one they mistook for weakness. Sergeant Thorne stepped closer, boots crunching in the gravel. He was used to being in control, the loudest voice, the center of gravity. The old man's indifference stung his pride. "I'm talking to you, old man. This is a live fire range. You need to pay attention." Kenneth straightened slowly, his spine protesting with a faint crack. When he finally turned, his pale blue eyes met Thorne's. They were steady, emotionless, neither angry nor afraid, simply observing. "I'm paying attention," Kenneth said quietly, his voice raspy, almost lost in the wind. The calmness only fueled Thorne's irritation. This frail janitor was ruining his authority, and he needed to reclaim it. He gestured toward his rifle, resting proudly on its bipod, a sleek M40A6 with a high-end Schmidt & Bender scope. "See this?" he said, his tone dripping with arrogance. "This is a real tool, not that broom you're holding. Takes skill, a steady hand. You even know what it's like to hit something that far out?" He pointed toward the distant steel silhouette glimmering 1,000 yards away. The kind of shot that separated experts from amateurs. "Tell you what, Grandpa," Thorne continued. "We're about to take our cold bore shot. First one of the day, hardest one to make. Ever seen a man hit a target that far?" Kenneth's gaze followed the direction of his finger. He didn't squint, didn't frown. His eyes locked on the target with quiet certainty. "A few times," he murmured. The simplicity of the reply was almost insulting. The Marines chuckled, sensing Thorne's growing anger. "All right, old man," Thorne barked. "Let's see what you've got." He held out the rifle mockingly. "Go ahead. Take the shot. We'll spot for you." The squad broke into laughter. To them, the sight of a fragile old man trying to handle a sniper rifle was pure comedy. A few Marines from nearby lanes turned to watch, amusement mingled with unease. A gunnery sergeant started forward, intent on ending the charade, but hesitated. Thorne was a rising star, a decorated sniper. Better not interfere. Kenneth looked at the rifle in silence. He didn't seem impressed by the precision scope or the carbon fiber stock. His attention rested instead on something small and old-fashioned, the simple worn leather sling attached to it. His eyes lingered on it, and for a heartbeat, the world shifted. The hot North Carolina air grew thick and humid, the smell of cordite fading into the stench of jungle rot. Mud replaced the gravel beneath his boots. He could feel the weight of a different rifle in his hands, heavier, wooden, soaked with monsoon rain. "Did you get him, Ken?" A young voice whispered through static and insects. "Did you get him?" Then, a single, muffled shot. Silence. The vision vanished as quickly as it came. Kenneth's focus returned to the range. Something cold and dangerous flickered in his pale eyes, then disappeared. He looked up at Thorne, met his smug grin, and gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. He would take the shot. High above, in the small observation tower, Master Gunnery Sergeant Elias Vance lowered his binoculars. A career Marine, his instincts had been forged in 100 battlefields. He'd been watching Thorne's squad all morning, unimpressed by their discipline. He had nearly ordered the range officer to stop the hazing until he saw the old man turn. Vance froze. It wasn't the man's age that caught him. It was his movement. The way he walked. Every step was deliberate, silent, balanced. The posture of someone who'd spent a lifetime moving unseen. The walk of a sniper. He raised his binoculars again, focusing on the old man's face. The lines, the jaw, those calm eyes. A name surfaced from the depths of memory. A name he'd only ever read in classified briefings and whispered legends. No, it couldn't be. That man had vanished half a century ago, a ghost. But Vance's instincts screamed otherwise. He fumbled for his phone, his pulse quickening. This wasn't a joke. It was sacrilege. Doctrine and standards, came the voice on the other end. This is Master Gunnery Sergeant Vance at Stone Bay, he said, voice tight. I need a name run. Priority 1, activate the Red Ledger protocol. The other end went silent. Then came the sound of frantic typing. Who's the name, Master Guns? Harding. Kenneth M. Harding. More typing. A sharp inhale. My God. Are you sure? I'm looking right at him, Vance said grimly. And Sergeant Thorne's platoon is about to make the biggest mistake of their careers. In a quiet office in Quantico, a silver-haired colonel slammed down his phone and shot to his feet. Captain, he barked. Get me General Morrison at Camp Lejeune. Broken Arrow priority, now. The young officer hesitated, startled by the emergency code. Sir, what's happening? The colonel paced, his voice heavy with disbelief. Master Guns Vance just called. He says Kenneth Harding is on the firing line. The captain frowned. The name meant nothing. Of course you don't know, the colonel snapped. You've read reports. We heard the stories. Kenneth Harding wasn't just a sniper, he was the sniper. They called him the Ghost of the Ashau Valley. He trained under Carlos Hathcock himself, turned the craft into something sacred. His confirmed kills are sealed under highest classification. The unofficial numbers. He trailed off, shaking his head. We thought he died decades ago. He turned sharply toward the window, seeing not Quantico but a jungle of memory. And now some cocky sergeant is mocking him on a firing range. The desk phone rang. He snatched it up. Morrison? Get to Stone Bay, now. Don't wait for details. Take your sergeant major and go. I'm wheels up in 10 minutes. He hung up, grabbed his cover, and muttered as he strode for the door. God help those Marines. I'm all out of mercy. Back on the range, the world had narrowed to a single point, the space between Kenneth Harding and a 1,000-yard target. The laughter, the crowd, the snide voices, all of it faded into silence. He was deep in the zone, that quiet, razor-sharp bubble of focus only true marksmen ever touch. The world around him faded. Sound and motion melted into stillness. Sergeant Thorne, oblivious to the chain of events he'd just set in motion, swaggered over and clapped Kenneth roughly on the shoulder. All right, old-timer, he said with a smirk. Let's see what you've got. Careful now, that scope's got a little kick. Then, with a subtle twist of his fingers, Thorne reached down and made a 2-click adjustment to the rifle's windage knob, a small, calculated act of sabotage. At 1,000 yards, that shift would throw the shot several feet off target. The trick would guarantee the old man's failure and earn Thorne another laugh at his expense. He winked at his squad, who snickered quietly behind him. Just aim it down range and pull the trigger, he said mockingly. Who knows? Maybe you'll hit dirt. Kenneth said nothing. He didn't check the scope. He didn't even put his eye to it. Instead, he closed his eyes. He felt the faint tremor in the ground beneath him, the gentle pressure of the wind crossing from left to right, the thickness of the humid air and the warmth of the sun on his cheek. His body read the environment like an instrument, every sense tuned, every detail measured. His mind, sharpened by years in jungles and mountains half a world away, processed it all effortlessly. His breathing slowed, one inhale, one exhale, steady as a metronome. His finger curled gently around the trigger. Then came a new sound, low, rhythmic, growing louder. It wasn't a car engine. It was the heavy chopping thump of a UH-1Y Huey helicopter skimming low across the base. Heads turned skyward as its shadow swept over the range. At that same moment, the screech of tires tore through the air. From the main road, a convoy of black government SUVs and white military police trucks barreled into the parking lot, lights flashing, sirens silent. They skidded to a stop in a storm of dust. Doors flew open. A full-bird colonel emerged first, medals glinting, fury written across his face. Behind him followed the base sergeant major, a broad, stone-faced man built like hewn rock. The Huey flared hard into a landing in the nearby field. Before its skids touched the ground, its door burst open, and a colonel from Quantico jumped out, followed closely by his captain. Their strides were sharp, direct, radiating command. As they approached, the entire range froze. Every conversation died. Every shot stopped. The laughter evaporated. Sergeant Thorne, suddenly pale, barked a shaky, "Attention!" But the base commander silenced him with one lethal glare. Before anyone could speak, the quiet cracked open with a single sharp report. The M40A6 firing. The sound echoed off the berms, rolling across the field. Every eye turned from the startled officers to the 1,000-yard target. For a heartbeat, there was only silence and ringing ears. Then, ping! A tiny, perfect sound carried back across the distance, the unmistakable ring of a bullet striking steel. On the high-definition monitor linked to the spotter scope, the truth was clear. Dead center, right between the eyes. A perfect cold-bore shot from a rifle with a sabotaged scope, fired by an 82-year-old man who swept floors for a living. Kenneth Harding exhaled and slowly pushed himself up from the prone position, joints creaking. He didn't bother to look downrange. He already knew. The Quantico colonel stepped forward, his boots crunching to a stop before Kenneth. His gaze never left the old man. Then, in a single motion, he stood tall, brought his hand sharply to his brow, and rendered a salute so crisp it cut through the stunned silence. It wasn't the salute of protocol, it was reverence. "Mr. Harding," the colonel said, his voice heavy with emotion. "It's an honor, sir." The base commander and sergeant major followed instantly, saluting in unison. One by one, every officer on the range followed suit. Then the enlisted Marines, confused but awed, raised their hands as well, until the entire firing line stood in silent tribute to the old man in his faded work clothes. Holding his salute, the colonel turned to the wide-eyed Marines. His voice thundered across the range. "For those of you who don't know who this man is, let me enlighten you. This is Gunnery Sergeant Kenneth M. Harding, retired, a legend of the Marine Corps, 3 tours in Vietnam, 1st Marine Division STA Platoon, later SOG. His marksmanship saved over 200 lives during the siege of Khe Sanh. When his spotter was killed, he held off an entire NVA battalion for 72 hours until reinforcements arrived. He is a recipient of the Navy Cross, 2 Silver Stars, and 3 Purple Hearts. He is not just a veteran, he is living history, and you will show him the respect he earned with his blood." The colonel dropped his salute and turned his icy gaze to Sergeant Thorne. "Sergeant," he said in a low, deadly tone, "you and your entire platoon will report to my temporary office at 600 tomorrow. You're going to relearn the meaning of honor, courage, and commitment. You've disgraced your uniform. You've disrespected this corps, and you've insulted a man who sacrificed more than your entire platoon combined." Thorne stood rigid, face drained, trembling with shame. His arrogance had shattered. He turned to Kenneth, his eyes hollow, filled now only with remorse. Kenneth looked at him calmly. "It's all right, Colonel," he said softly. "He's just young, full of fire. The Corps needs that fire. He just needs to learn where to aim it." He met Thorne's eyes, his voice kind but steady. "The rifle's a fine weapon, son, though there's too much glass on top for my taste. In my day, we felt the wind, counted the clicks, but you'll get there. Just remember, the man behind the rifle matters more than the rifle itself. Respect your weapon, but respect the man beside you more. That's what lasts. His gaze fell to the old leather sling on the rifle, worn, cracked, but still strong. A memory flickered. A jungle. Mud. His young spotter, Private Miller, grinning as he handed him that very sling. "Got you a new one, Gunny," the boy had said. "Traded my last pack of smokes for it. Won't let you down." Miller had been gone 2 days later, but the sling endured, a symbol of friendship, sacrifice, and the bond that never fades. That, Kenneth thought, was the real lesson. The fallout at Stone Bay was immediate. The footage, stripped of classified detail, became official training material, a timeless reminder of humility and respect. Every Marine NCO thereafter studied it as part of ethics and heritage training. Sergeant Thorne and his platoon weren't discharged. The Corps chose redemption over punishment. They were formally reprimanded and placed under Master Gunnery Sergeant Vance for a month of spiritual realignment. They didn't fire a single round. Instead, they cleaned memorials, volunteered at the VFW Hall, and listened to old Marines tell stories of what service truly meant. Weeks later, when the chaos had faded, Kenneth was back on the range. Morning mist curled off the ground as he swept brass from the dirt. Footsteps approached. It was Rex Thorne. No rifle, no swagger, just a young Marine in PT gear holding 2 steaming cups of coffee. He hesitated, then extended one. "Mr. Harding." "Gunny," he said quietly. "I just wanted to say thank you." Kenneth looked at the sincerity in his eyes, took the cup, and nodded. "You've got the fire, son," he said gently. "Just remember, learn where to point it." They stood in silence, side by side, the old warrior and the humbled Marine, watching the sunrise over the quiet range. Valor, Kenneth thought, isn't always loud. Sometimes it's found in the quiet dignity of those who never stop serving.